came back, and that put him right back to where he was. PTSD, I don't know, it was the drugs or the smoke that he was getting. His buddy Michael was always coming by when he needed something to call Mike. Mike would come by with his drugs just to make him feel better. Even the doctor he did finally go to a doctor, and the doctor was going to give him a new pill. I have issues with that, with doctors that think that another pill is going to fix the situation. There's nothing that alcohol or a pill is going to fix. Nothing. You just have to learn, or you have to try to learn. You know, everything in our lives, things don't always go right. You know, there's not a fairy tale ending to the story. But we go through life, we try to deal with what's dealt, the cards we're dealt with. And you have to realize that you don't have to do it alone. You have to rely on your friends. Trish came back and tried to be a friend. Haley pushed her away. Her dad let her hang out because her dad knew somewhere in that fogged mind of his, he knew, he had a plan. He was going to check out. He got his Purple Heart, he got his wedding ring and his deceased wife's wedding ring, gave it to an envelope, wrote out all those Christmas cards and birthday cards, dated them, put them in a box so that his daughter would get them 1 year at a time. He was going to be gone. He wasn't going to be around. He had a plan. Haley went out on that cliff at the quarry, and maybe he saw the light. Maybe he didn't want to die at that. Maybe he changed his mind. So the story ends up, we don't know it. We don't know how it ends. Within that, to me, that's a sign of a good book. It keeps you thinking, what happened? It's not, nope, they lived happily ever after. Here and Finn got married, they had babies, everything was good, they got jobs, went to college. Life doesn't work that way. There's not always we just try to do the best that we can. One thing that was typical about his disease is he lied about his working. Yeah, I worked for so-and-so, I worked part-time, I worked for cash. Well, she called the guy, he didn't have any more work for him. Well, he probably didn't have any work to begin with. It was something that he made up. Lying and being deceitful is typical of an addict and an alcoholic. They'll do anything they can to keep the wolf off their back, to keep their family from intervening, so to speak. Intervention, that's a key word with the addict and the alcoholic. Trish tried to intervene. Roy tried to intervene. They wanted to get in there and get him to do something, but the dad rejected it. He just didn't want anything to do with it. He stayed in his room, he isolated. He would stay in his room during the day or at night, after school. When Haley was home, he wasn't anywhere to be seen. When she left, that's when he'd get up and he'd drink and he'd smoke his dope. Left the house a mess, destroyed the house on a couple of occasions. Stuff that's not real pretty. At the end, you know, it said the message that came at the end of the book was, you're not alone. It said we're not able to put the pain of our past behind us, but we have to concentrate on loving each other. That was way at the end of the book. If you haven't got there, you'll see it. But that's a huge message, that you're not in this thing alone. The PTSD and what the government is doing for the people that are coming back, in my opinion, is not enough. Personally, I went to the VA and asked for something and I didn't get it, because they told me that I made too much money, that I make over $27,000 a year. And they said, thank you for being a responsible vet and saving for your retirement, and we can't help you. And I lost my temper. And I yelled and I screamed at that lady. And I left, I went to my truck, I went back in, and I apologized to her. I said, for my action, for my behavior, the words that I used. And I said, you're only the messenger. You only work here. It's not her fault. It's the people in Washington that are not doing enough for our vets. And all I wanted was something simple. We lost our insurance, and all I wanted was a copay on my prescriptions, because I take for high blood pressure and for type 2 diabetes. I didn't think it was a lot that I was asking for, but there were other vets that were more serious, and the line was long. So I guess I'm grateful that I can pay for my own thing. If you have any people in your family in these situations, triggers that change behaviors are holidays and change of seasons. That will cause a person to start using again if they're in any kind of a recovery program. Enabling. We tend to enable people with addictions, and we tend to look past what their issues are and try to make things comfortable. That's just the way, that's our nature. I see, what, 9:40, what time is this class over?
10:30.
You wanna have 10 minutes for questions. I'm gonna let you guys ask questions. Did I cover enough of that book for you guys?
Yeah.
So,
Most.
Most of our questions.
Well,
did I really?
Yeah.
We have a couple about the fan, like if she was.
If what? Ask the question.
Go ahead.
Did you go to college after, like, you?
I went to college 1 year. When I got drafted, they told me what day I was gonna go, so to kill the time before I went into the service, I went to college. And then my mother made me promise that I would go back to college after I got out of the service. So I kept that promise. I went for 1 year, like I promised, and then I quit. When I got back to college in 1971, I went for the full year. I was getting the GI Bill, I was working at a bank as an auditor, and I was going to school. And all the kids that were going to school at that time, they had money in their pocket. They could drink and drug. When I went into service, I didn't know what marijuana was. When I got to the Navy, they showed me what it was, and they said, "Don't do this." I lived a very sheltered life in North Dakota. There were no drugs. It was just, I didn't know a lot. I never met a black person until I went in the Navy, if you can believe that. So my eyes were awakened. I did learn how to live with people of different parts of the United States, from the South, from the North, from the East and the West, all over. But I did go back to college, and when I was in the Navy, I acquired a taste for alcohol. So when I got back and I was going to school, working, I was also partying. And I just, all that combination together did not work. And I felt that if I had to compete with those kids that were doing the drugging and the drinking, I could beat them. So I left school. I was very fortunate. I met some great people. I worked hard. I was honest. I never stole from anybody. I never missed a day of work. I partied a lot, but I never used it as an excuse to call in sick, to do it. Right now, I don't do any of that. Been sober for 10 years. I'm part of AA. I go to meetings. Not so much that I think that if I don't go to a meeting, I'm gonna take a drink, but I wanna be there for the person that walks in that door, that I will be there for that person. And there's people that come in there every day. I go to a meeting at 6:30 every morning in Wilmington, and someone has to be there for those people. So the answer is yes, I did go back to college. I didn't graduate. I have 2.5 years of college under my belt, but I never got a degree. Please have a question. And that time flies, doesn't it?
How is it not being able to be with your family?
Oh, it's a blessing. It's a blessing. If I was still using or abusing alcohol, I wouldn't be allowed to be with my family. I wouldn't have a relationship with Tisha and her siblings, or my daughter, her mother, or my wife. I wouldn't have a home to go to, because they weren't gonna put up with it. They were not gonna enable my problem. I would have been on the street.
How did you stay in touch with your family?
Oh, I was always there. Oh, when I was in the service?
Yes.
Oh, letters. There was, yeah, there was no iPhones, no Skyping. It was only United States mail. I wrote home weekly. I didn't get much mail, but I always wrote and told my mom and dad what I was doing. And when we went home, after my mother passed away and we cleaned out my mother's house, there was a box that had all my letters in it that I sent home. And I didn't even read them, I pitched them. I wasn't interested in that part of my life anymore.
Was it hard to readjust to home life?
When I got out of the service, yes, it was. When I came back got out of the service, the Vietnam vets were not well liked. We were the baby killers. On TV, they were showing. Oh, I have another quick story to tell you too. On TV, they were showing the babies being killed. So we were the baby killers. No matter what you did, if you served, I was in the Navy, I was never over there, but I was just as guilty as the guy that was there. So I didn't tell some people that I was in the service because I didn't want to get in a fight, because they were bad-mouthing us, and I wasn't gonna do it. In the part of the book where the smart bomb, on page 115, where he has this nightmare where there's two places, and they have the bombs come in and hit that building, and they hit the wrong building, and the civilians die. Kid I went to high school with in Vietnam was the one who developed that technology to tell the planes where to put the bomb. They're still using that manual today in the military, what this kid wrote. He's as messed up as I am. He could not deal with that. And then another friend of ours, a classmate of ours, he works in New Mexico in one of those secret government facilities. He was the one who took the physics and the calculus and all that the guy was a genius. And the government got a hold of him, and they're using his technology. We were at a class reunion, and he was talking about the stuff that they're doing with the Scud missiles, putting them in when they were going after Saddam Hussein and trying to get the other nut. Got his name. How can I forget his name? Anyway, they were putting, the Scud missile pinpoint, and then this guy says, "Well, you can't talk about that. That's top secret." He says, "I wrote the book." So I know some famous people, but he's the one who the missile wasn't wrong. The missile went where it was supposed to go, but they had bad information. They got the bad information and said, "Okay, put it at this coordinate." They did, but they gave them the wrong coordinate. So, but that's in the book. That still affected that guy's mind as an atrocity that happened, and innocent people died, and it affected his life for a long time. But the smart bombs were something. But no, it was tough when I first came back from Vietnam. There were no parades, no thank you for your service. A young man in the classroom today thanked me for my service, and I said, "You're welcome." But that didn't happen in 1972, 73, 74. Didn't happen. What's the guy's name?
Emma.
Yes. What?
What?
Go ahead.
You have a question? Oh, what impacted you most during your time serving?
What?
What impacted you the most during your time serving?
I loved the work that I did. I loved the people that I worked with. I did not like the military, shine your shoes, get a haircut. Because I knew when I needed a haircut. I didn't think I needed anybody to tell me. I was kind of rebellious. But the biggest thing that I did when I was in the Navy was landing in an airplane, a small airplane, landing on an aircraft carrier. That's the most exciting thing that I did in the service. It was awesome. that was a